If you've sold work before, or you simply want to start working like a professional, either in terms of your painting quality or in terms of your business success, today I want to talk about the steps that you can take to make that happen, to start reaching your professional level painting goals. So today I'm going to be taking a look at the next 12 months for me and exploring what kinds of goals I, as a professional artist, set and how together we can go about reaching those kinds of goals. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Chelsea. I'm a full-time professional oil painter specializing in expressive portraiture. Every week, I share a new video with you on how you can master your unique painting style. If you enjoy this video or you learn something helpful, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And if you especially enjoy or learn from my content and you would like this kind of help achieving professional quality in your portraiture, I do offer mentorships designed to help you reach your painting goals. For more information on those, you can check out the links in the description to find out more and apply to see if you and I are a fit to work together. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the kinds of goals that I set as a professional artist and what this means for you. So, you got me. It's not January 1st. This is not a New Year's resolution. But nonetheless, I am sitting here taking a look at the work that I really want to make, the vision that I have for my work, and thinking about what I've been up to the past 12 months. And I think it's time. I think it's time to put together an action plan for the next year. And I think this actually introduces one of the really important points that I want to touch on, which is this coming year or this coming period that you've set for yourself, it doesn't have to be 12 months. In fact, 90-day or quarterly sprints can be really helpful in reaching your goals as well. So just note that I might be talking in terms of the next 12 months, but the unit of time is pretty arbitrary here. We just don't want it to be, so long that you feel like you can procrastinate or so short that you feel rushed. But regardless of what time period you choose, I think it's really helpful to ask yourself, is this a maintenance phase or is this a growth phase? And for me, the past year on the painting side, while it has entailed a good amount of painting growth, I've made paintings that really helped me to explore new techniques, paintings that I had been waiting to make for years, but I just wasn't able to technically do what I wanted until this past year. But nonetheless, I would describe the past 12 months as somewhat of a maintenance phase for me. And that is because in the past year, I spent a lot of my time dedicated to my students, dedicated to making my mentorships the best they can absolutely be, on identifying exactly what kind of artist I can best help and what that needs to look like and what kind of goals that I can help them to reach. It's helped me to clarify that first and foremost, I paint people or animals. I am a portrait and figurative painter, first and foremost. That might always be the case, but for right now, that's very much my identity and it's my wheelhouse. But my focus has really been there. It's been on my students, on my mentorships, and on top of that, giving myself the opportunity to explore some new things in my work. But I haven't really put that out in the world in a really big way. And I think I'm feeling the repercussions of that now. I really feel hungry to make work that excites me. It's been a long time since I've made a really big painting. For instance, the painting of the little girl playing with her dress in the chair. So many of you think of that painting when you think of me first and foremost. And it's been years since I've made that painting. And I would love to be making more things that had that feeling, that had that narrative quality, that had that scope of composition. And I think I'm ready to go for something like that. So this signals to me that the next year for me is going to be more about growth than maintenance. And I would encourage you to answer that same question for yourself as well. And if you do want to grow, I think it's really helpful to understand what you want to grow toward, in what other aspects of your life or your career may need to just be going in the flow and just keeping steady rather than trying to grow every aspect of your life at once. So when I think about making a really big piece, like that painting that I just mentioned, I feel like this is ironic because you're watching me work on an incredibly small 6x8 painting for this video, but that's okay. When I think about being able to make a really big painting like that again, the first thing that really needs to happen is that I need to set aside time to gather that kind of reference again. You know, the reason you don't see me making paintings like that over and over is because making that kind of painting requires orchestrating that kind of photo shoot. I need a model, I need an outfit, I need a space, I need to set aside time. All of these things create friction in the process. And so it's often easier to, work off of reference that maybe isn't quite as expansive in scope, where I'm not having to think of like props and costuming and setting, but instead I can just think about a portrait in a very simple environment where I'm painting something that feels a little bit more like a vignette. One part of my goal is to start making pieces that are competition worthy. And I don't mean to say that in terms of their quality or the skill that goes into making them, but typically competition pieces are they're bigger. They have more happening. The painting's bigger, the scope of the painting's bigger, there's probably more of a narrative quality. There are more elements that you need to juggle in terms of thinking about things like background, costuming, props. So for me to make pieces that are worthy of entering into Portrait Society of America, for instance, I really need to focus first and foremost on gathering reference that sets me up to make those kinds of paintings. This is a really big misconception I see often. People who think that creating that painting was something that I did out of my imagination or off of just like a quick snapshot that I took on my iPhone or something like that. The reality is that creating those kinds of pieces take so many hours of planning. The photo shoot might be hours, thinking about costuming, scouting locations, considering lighting and testing those things, coming up with ideas. We're talking so many hours that goes into making a piece like that. And no amount of me being a good painter can overcome that lack of planning. So setting aside time to do those photo shoots really is the first thing that needs to be on my list as far as how I can go about setting myself up to reach this kind of goal. And I think the action steps that I can put together toward this are actually pretty straightforward. I probably don't need to think too much in terms of like a grand creative vision where I have everything all worked out conceptually. Instead, I probably need to just tell myself that once a month I'm doing a photo shoot, and I can go ahead and do some work to identify who my models are in advance, or what kinds of costuming might be suitable for that model, what kinds of environments might be interesting to paint, and I really need to just start throwing things at the wall. I shouldn't spend so much time trying to control every variable and not being willing to expend energy unless I've got it all figured out. Instead, I need to just get in the habit of doing it. I'm probably going to get a lot of really good reference on the way, and I'm probably going to learn way more by approaching this challenge in terms of iterative cycles and consistency versus trying to just overthink it and manufacture my way to success, or more specifically, trying to think about this so hard that I think that I can inoculate myself against failure. So already I've taken a really big goal and I've turned it into the actual thing that I need to do to make this possible. I need to set aside time once a month to do these photo shoots and to go ahead and pre-plan, put together a list of who my models might be, what the costumes would look like, what the locations would be that I should consider, and other logistical details such as lighting. And I can trust that if I stick to this, I'm gonna get a lot of reference, and it's probably gonna get me way closer to those grand scale kinds of paintings that I'm interested in that would be worthy of entering into a competition. Now, the next goal I have for myself is around consistency. This, I think, is at the forefront of my mind here. I don't want to be the kind of artist who makes a really great piece and then, sits there just sitting around for months after, like recovering or feeling uninspired. I think that I'm happiest if I have consistent inspiration. And that's something that we can manufacture. We don't have to wait for that to come around. So everything I do, I want it to be in service of this idea of consistency. What can I do to make sure that I have ideas that I'm interested in on a weekly basis? I actually think this first goal of putting together photo shoots is going to serve this goal of consistency tremendously. Not having reference is one of the biggest barriers to painting, and if I am routinely going out getting that reference, it makes everything else so much easier, and it reduces so much friction across the board. The other piece of consistency here is that I need to somehow balance consistency and variety. Or to put it another way, I need to make sure that I'm not getting bored of my work, that I'm continuously interested in it, that I'm continually proud of it. So what can I do to set myself up for this? So in my case, this is about continual learning. This is about being a lifelong learner. I am often at my most enthusiastic, not when I have an idea for a painting, but when I look at a painting someone else has made and I say to myself, I want to learn how to do that. And I think tapping into that little piece, understanding what it is that fuels me is so incredibly underrated. And I think that if you can set aside time to understand what sets you up to feel really inspired and how can you plan your painting time around that, I think that's going to be really powerful. So for me, what this looks like is that I don't just need reference, I need to give myself new stimulation as far as what I'm learning, what I'm pushing toward, what techniques am I developing. One of the easiest ways for me to do this, to tap into this feeling, is doing master copies. This creates a little bit of a logistical challenge because yes, there are old masters whose work is in the public domain. For example, Sargent, Sorolla, where I can spend some time dedicated to learning from those painters, and it can serve the dual purpose of being able to put it on YouTube. But there are a lot of painters who make really cool stuff. And the best way for me to learn from them is to do master copies of their work, but they are living artists. I am not going to do studies of their work and put that on YouTube. And this presents a little bit of a challenge because it means I have to spend time in the studio doing something that I'm not putting up for sale, that I'm not putting up for YouTube, that I'm not using as a demo for my students, and instead it is just for me. And I think that can be a really difficult thing as a professional artist. There's this pressure to be able to monetize everything that you do. So to actually facilitate this, there's a couple of things that I realize needs to happen. First off, I need to set aside time that is not just the time that I spend making paintings that I can record to put on YouTube, that's for me to learn from other artists. I'm gonna have to take a look at my schedule and figure out how I can actually carve that out and make that possible. But the good news is that I can trust that if I do that, it's gonna make everything else I do that much more impactful. If I actually set aside the time to learn from these other painters, it's going to make the paintings I put on YouTube all the more strong and interesting. It's going to help me come up with more interesting topics to share with you all. It's going to help me be all the more specific and engaging to the students that I work with as well. So that, I would say, is the first action item as far as producing consistency without things getting tedious. The second is that I probably need to put together a list of artists or paintings that I really want to learn from and study, so that if I come into my studio, I never am confronted with that question or feeling of, oh my God, what do I paint today? I think the less I can experience that feeling or that question, the better off I'm going to be. This painting that you're watching me work on now really represents this. It represents me trying something new and really pushing the limits of what I understand how to do in my work. This painting is really heavily influenced by Kwang Ho and the tonal studies that he's done of professional dancers. For me, art and dance and horseback riding, they are all intrinsically linked in my life. I think that I got excited about horses because I had that artistic background, and horses are often thought of as the most beautiful or aesthetic animals in nature. I love their anatomy, the way that they move. It's captivated me since I was really little, and as a result, I have really loved making these equestrian-themed paintings. And then when I was a little bit older, I discovered an artist, way back on DeviantArt actually, who did this amazing comic series about a ballerina. And they were slightly abstracted, but the attention to anatomy was so clear. And just that slight exaggeration of the human form in dance just enthralled me. It actually led me as a senior in high school to go out and learn ballet for the first time. And that's what got me started dancing. And that has been its own journey in my life ever since. There's this tie between the gesture and the anatomy and the shapes and the lines that dancers make that, for me, I always think that I am a dancer who filters what I do through the lens of painting. What line am I hitting? What shape am I making? And part of this idea of consistency was bringing that full circle and taking dance as inspiration for what I create and making art that's really focused on that movement, that gesture, that sense of anatomy. This is a little bit of a departure from what I've done before, in that the work that I did before was so heavily portrait-oriented. And this is me zooming back out to work on the figure, which is something that I haven't done a ton of in my career. But I think that little bit of variety and making sure that I'm tapping into my passions in a way that feels holistic and comprehensive, I think that's going to be a really essential part of what I do for the next year. And to learn how to work with the kind of reference that I would get from dancers, there are all kinds of new skills and techniques that I need to explore that, today yielded this painting and might yield something wholly different tomorrow. I don't know, but I'm really excited to find out. And I think that's what our goal setting really needs to accomplish. It needs to get us fired up and excited, and it needs to give us a really concrete idea of how we need to be spending our time on a day-to-day basis to actually make that happen. So I hope that this video has given you insight into what you might want to do for yourself in order to reach those professional level goals. And if you want my help to really lock that in, or to give you a fresh perspective, or simply to give you the structure to help you make sure you reach those goals, I would love to hear from you. So make sure to check out the links in the description to find out more about my mentorships and to see if we are a fit to work together. All right, until next time, happy painting.